Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar about club level touring presented by Eric Price. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. Just a few notes before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down the noise level, but you can enter your questions in through the chat box. We'll consolidate those and we'll answer them at the end. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this live webinar. We do have a number of other webinars that are taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control. And we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different sessions in our Learning Sessions workshop series on pro.harman.com, as well as visiting Harman Professional University to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for free. And now I'd like to introduce you to Eric Price, the presenter for today's webinar. Eric is a touring concert lighting designer with more than 10 years experience. His current clients include Taking Back Sunday, Motion City Soundtrack, Bayside, and Skinny Puppy. Eric's responsibilities include budgeting, designing, programming, and operating a variety of lighting packages. And now I'm going to pass the mic over to you, Eric.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Laura. So as Laura said, I am a touring lighting designer. I work in a variety of venue sizes with my designs, predominantly in the 1,200 to 3,000 capacity venues, House of Blues, Fillmore's, venues of such. I am a Hog4 programmer, although in this talk we're not really going to get into console-specific programming. We're going to speak more generally about lighting design in those venue sizes. In my spare time, I play way too much pinball as well. So I'm going to go through a few examples of recent projects just to give you a visual representation of what I'm going to talk about. This is Taking Back Sunday from last year. It was a fully pre-rigged floor package deployed in a semi-trailer, flat-packed, and contained a custom set piece you see there with a panther head on a custom cart with an air piston to raise it. None of these are going to have any air rigging. Important to remember, we're going to stick to floor package lighting under the assumption that we are not allowed to rig anything beyond the backdrop in any of these venues. This is Thrice from a few years ago. Again, floor package. Daily build, 12-inch box truss, quantums on top, as you can see, a couple other lights thrown through there. Daily build, not pre-rigged. Andrew McMahon from a few years ago, more of a theatrical show, not able to be pre-rigged, very modular set in a variety of venues. Under Oath, partial pre-rigged, custom set carts. Arena size tour, although it was a support act, so we're going to talk about this because of the stage restrictions, the size, the space we had, the need for expedited setup and strike. Skinny Puppy, again, floor package, risers, a little bit of video element. This was a European tour, same club sizes, done in a box truck. Most recently, Motion City Soundtrack, US club tour headlining, fully pre-rigged in a bus and trailer. And here's what we're going to discuss a little bit today. We're going to talk about what your artist needs and how to verbalize that from them, how to get them to tell you what you need and how to let them know what to expect from some of the venues. What to expect from the venues, front light, side light, color. We're going to discuss everything from, pardon me here. We're going to discuss everything from what the venue is going to have available to you and what to expect as a general idea across the venues. Space and distance, we're going to talk about stage sizes, trim heights, cabling, pre-rig versus daily build, just kind of dabbled on that. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of both. Custom fixtures, anything that is non-standard that you're going to have to deal with, custom DMX layouts, building your own, finding profiles. Local ordinances, including haze restrictions. We're going to dabble a little bit onto some laser safety ordinances that you're going to have to look out for. We're going to do some trailer tricks, some things that I've found best way to deal with space inside a trailer. And then finally, how to create an effective event so that you can be ready when you walk in the door. So the first topic, what does your artist need? Well, do they want front light? Do they like front light? Do they want side light? Are there specials they need? All these basic things that you're going to want to talk to about the show with your artist before the design happens. I've been pretty fortunate to have a lot of artists that don't love front light. So I bring my own side light. A little less intrusive, you can kind of sneak in the color with them there. We're going to talk about this later, that you can't always rely on a venue having front color. Does the artist have a backdrop? How big is it? Do they have a fire cert? Do they have burn samples? All those logistics should be run through your TM most of the time, but I personally like to have all the documentation with me. Venues are going to ask you, LDs are going to ask you, production managers are going to ask you. So it's easier just to kind of have it yourself as with your TM. Does support have backdrops? If support has backdrops, it is in your best interest to carry them with you. As the headlining artist, it's going to be a lot easier if you just hang it for them every day, you take care of it at night, and you work out whatever deal you want. Let them buy you a candy bar. What does your artist have for backline? As a lighting designer dealing with floor packages, backline can be a huge challenge. Bass amps are very big. Synth cabinets can get very big. So have a talk with your artist and your stage tech, your guitar tech, your monitor engineer, your production manager, and try to use it. Try to get creative with it. Can you put things on it? Do you want to put things on it? Do you want to shoot around it? Do you want to use it as a silhouetting device? You can get creative with backline, but it's always best to know exactly where everything is going. You should have as good of an idea about guitar cabs and drum kits and risers as the backline techs do. Speaking of risers, is your artist carrying risers? Generally speaking, you're probably not going to be carrying risers if you're in a bus and trailer. Getting into a box truck or semi, maybe you are. Risers can often fall on backline duty. They can fall on drum tech duty. But again, I like to be in there dealing with the riser as well. It causes off-center marks. It causes symmetry issues if they're not in the right place. So, you know, always worry about your risers just like your backline. So what can you expect from the venue? First thing you're going to do walking through the venue is what we call walk and chalk, generally referred to as walking the venue, marking the floor for rigging points, and getting the day going. We are going under the assumption that we're not rigging anything in the air, so we're just going to use this as a start of the day term. Very first thing I do when I do walk and chalk is look at front light. Again, we talked about what you're going to be offered from these venues. You're going to get everything from ellipsoidals, Lecos that are focusable, par cans of all different flood sizes, LED pars, moving spots, moving washes. So the only thing you can guarantee is that you will have some sort of focusable CTO front light, meaning no colored conventional light up to a LED par that's RGB, and you're going to have to deal. So in my experience, it's always safest if you want continuity show to show to plan on no color front light, or single color if you want to gel it or park it in a CTB because that's what you need, But You can't ever plan on having a full complement of front color in any of these venue sizes. You will have it some days, you will not have it other days. Continuing through walk and chalk, front light, how is the focus done? First thing you want to look at when you're looking at front light, how is the focus done? Is it a catwalk? Does someone have to ride the truss up? Is it ladders? Is it a genie? Where's the genie? How long does it take for the genie to get into the venue? All of these things are going to expedite your day, make your life a little bit easier and less stressful. Looking around the house rig during walk and chalk, how's the health of the lights? Just because there are 12 moving spots up there doesn't mean they all work properly. Find this out at the beginning of the day from the house LD. You can start making mental adjustments on how your show is going to be patched and programmed. Are the lights gelled properly? If it's a full complement of PAR or conventional lighting, hopefully you've advanced what colors you want. Are the colors what they need to be? Anything over stage, you're going to want to handle immediately, possibly before load-in even happens, because the rig will potentially have to be brought down or someone climb to fix it, and you don't want load-in happening all over the stage when this is going on if you don't need it to. Any haze restrictions in the house? I always ask right away, do we have a haze curfew? Do we have an ordinance? Fire alarms have to be shut off. What time are they? Hopefully, again, this is all in your advance. You've looked it over. It's been communicated, but always ask the person on the front line about it beginning of the day. If you find out all of a sudden you don't have haze for the first 3 hours, you can certainly change up your daily routine to accommodate it and work more efficiently. Backdrop hang. Again, before anything happens on stage, build happens, it's always best to get the backdrop up and going, out of the way. That way you can maximize all of your stage space. You don't want to be waiting on truss towers to be built because the backdrops have to be hung due to space constraints. Lastly, when looking over the house rig, are there any off-market, custom-made fixtures? Again, you're going to want to know these things well in advance in your day, as soon as possible, or further days in advance, just to mentally prepare yourself for your routine. So after the walk and chalk has happened and you start doing your load in, the load in is going to happen whether you can get it in or not. Pardon me. Sorry about that, folks. The load-in is going to happen whether you have space for it or not. One way or another, we have to get our gear into the venues. Generally speaking, anything you have coming into the venue should be able to fit inside a standard door frame. That is not always the case, though. You will find a few inches here and there knocked off a door frame to make your life a little bit harder. Always have a second plan, always have a way to disassemble, carry upstairs, around buildings. House DMX and guest lines. Depending on what your floor package requires, this can vary greatly. Most people these days are requiring Cat 5 to run everything. All the fixtures we're getting these days are larger footprints, taking up more universes. And generally people are kind of stepping away from 5-pin touring snake lines. It's just not enough for us. So generally speaking, you're always going to want to bring your own snake if possible. If you can get away with doing a single 5-pin DMX run for whatever floor package you're bringing, 95% of the time, roughly speaking, the house is going to have it for you. Fairly standard, the DMX 5-pin guest channel is available. Again, you can't always plan on it, always best to carry your own. And in that case, I should say 300 foot is what you would want to base your snake run off of. I have not personally found a venue in the House of Blues, Fillmore, 1,200 to 3,000 capacity area that will not work with a 300 foot snake line. Park ends. So one of the bigger challenges within this style venue is that the lighting rigs are going to vary greatly on when they were installed, how they were maintained, and even the design choices between them. You're going to have venues that are Parcam rigs. That being said, you'll have Parcam only rigs that will have no moving automated lights whatsoever, strictly conventional, strictly dimmers. And then you'll have days that have a mix of a little bit of everything. And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. Intensities. Getting into a little bit of programming theory. I know I mentioned we're not going to talk so much about programming theory, but I want to talk about intensities for a minute because a lot of people, I wouldn't say avoid them, but don't put as much focus and importance on them as you should. Just as I said a minute ago, a lot of these venues are going to have different aged lighting rigs. For example, you will go into a venue and see brand new Martin Axioms, such as you'll go into a venue and see Mac 250, same capacity size, same tour, not competing, but you know, the same venue in one city to the other. So using your intensities wisely is going to just make your show a lot better in these venues. You're going to have a lot of different throw distances. You're going to have a lot of different types of fixtures. So, you know, starting with your intensity palettes is just going to make it a much cleaner looking show. Fast and accurate focus, going back to the focus a little bit. We've now kind of come back full circle on this. You want to have a plan. Now, that can probably go without being said. We all want to have a plan doing everything. But you want to have a plan. You want to talk to the house LD about it or whoever the house tech is. You know, I may have brushed over this before, but I'm going about this under the assumption that we do not have a touring lighting tech, that the lighting department is one person and that's you. So when you're doing the front focus for the house, you want to have a plan. You want to talk to the house LD about it or the tech, whoever is helping you with focus. You want to be clear and concise and let them know your motions, your style, tell them where your positions are before they go up. Tell them we're going to cut at the knees. We're going to keep it tight. Everything's going to be half focus, soft. You know, anything that can, open the line of communication and make the process happen quicker. If you're able to, I highly suggest some sort of remote system, whether it be console-based or, your own homemade device that triggers things. Any way you can take another person out of the situation will help. Always easier to focus front light with 2 people instead of 3. Talk to your audio. Talk to the audio crew. Talk to anybody else in the building. If anyone's up in the air and focusing, you don't want line check to be happening. You don't want sound check to be happening. You want safety first for the house staff. You want to look after them. They're there to help you, help them work safely. No noise when anyone's in the air. At least those are my rules. What I hope and prefer from a venue plot. When I program my tours, much like everybody else, I will program some sort of house lighting rig that then gets cloned or type changed or whatever your console refers to changing fixture types. So as I said before, you're going to get a variety of lighting. What I plan to see and plan to clone in and out of is what you see here. I like to and hope to see a mid-stage and upstage truss. Upstage has 6 spots, in this case Mac Vipers, and 6 washes, Mac Auras. Mid-stage has 6 washes and 6 spots as well, with the hang points flipped to alternate. I've thrown in a few strobes and a couple of blinders, although you're not always going to be able to plan on having either. Crowd light blinders are a little bit easier to get around. Perhaps you've got a rig full of LEDs and you can just allocate a few of those to act as your moles or your crowd light. Similarly with strobes, if you really need it, then perhaps you can just clone them into some sort of other fixture and still get some effectiveness out of that part of your programming. Front wash, I generally use Mac Auras or Vipers. Doesn't really matter for me. As I said, I generally work with just a CTO front light. No color, I get all my color from the side, so I put them in there just to have pan and tilt and beam focus for an automated light. Here is an example of what you will get. So I'll go back really quick. My preferred plot and what you will potentially get. I believe this is an older plot from Cleveland House of Blues, which has been updated. They've recently updated to Martin Rush series, I believe, and Auras for wash fixtures. But as you can see here, big Parcan rig. You can see the variety of Lecos for front light, as well as PAR for front light. Looks like some wide floods or Fresnels for wash light, or for crowd light, pardon me, as well as a few moles on the mid-stage truss. And then if you start looking into any of the automated fixtures, it seems as though we've got 4 DMY washes on the upstage, 2 spots on the upstage, 2 spots on the mid-stage, and 4 moving wash on the mid-stage. Pretty far different from this plot, but still manageable. If I have taken my preferred plot and done any specials or show important looks, solo spots from behind, from a moving spot, a moving wash, anything like that, working from inside out, I know that I've always got, or at least in this case, I've got my 3rd and 4th fixture on my upstage truss, and potentially my 3rd and 4th or 2nd and 5th spot fixture on my mid-stage truss. Nice example of how to know when you're going to trim lights away from what you've programmed and what you've hoped to see in the venue. Looking at it another way here that could also be problematic, you notice that in my plot, I have alternated the fixtures. The upstage has 2 spots center and, or pardon me, 2 auras center, and the mid-stage has 2 spots center. Not the case in this plot. So you have to be ready and willing to accept the fact that, you know, any, say, an effect that you've run across a pixel map or something that sweeps left to right on the rig may not work in the same way here. Different fixture positioning is the issue. Spacing and distancing. Stage size is going to vary greatly. You will see in venues of this size anything from 20-foot wide to 48, 50, 54-foot wide. You are definitely going to see a drastic change day to day in stage space. Generally speaking, you're going to get a 24 foot wide by 20 foot deep, maybe 32 foot wide by 20 foot deep stage. It really just depends on the booking. Depth is a little bit harder to judge, even though, you know, it won't vary as greatly as width, in my opinion. But then again, the depth is going to be a lot more specific to your artist's needs. I tend to find a lot of artists are much more particular about the depth of the backline and the zone risers than they are the width of everyone being spread out or bunched together. Along with space and distance on stages, starting from the core of the system, how much feeder do you need? Generally speaking, if you are able to park your distro in an upstage corner, left or right, you will be able to advance most of these venues with 25 foot of feeder. You will still need enough cable in your looms and whatnot to get across stage. I generally find that 50 feet from the upstage right distro will get you to the downstage left corner of the stage. So 25 foot on feeder, if you can live it in the corner, and 50 foot on your farthest loom, generally is a good starting point. Carrying excessive feeder obviously can carry a lot of weight that we don't want to deal with. I've spent many years touring with 50 foot of feeder just to be safe. And frankly, if you run into that one venue that is 35 foot away from stage, I'm sure you can find yourself 10 foot of feeder to make the jump if the venue cannot. Always advance, always have it labeled, always let them know what you have, and work from there, hopefully a few days before the show. If your distro lives upstage center, I would definitely recommend 50 foot or more of feeder. Hopefully your distro doesn't have to live upstage center. That can be a problem as well as an eyesore, but sometimes it has to happen. Trim height and clearance. Probably the hardest thing to judge your floor package to a venue and design your floor package to a venue. House trim height, house lighting rigs are going to be drastically different day to day. Again, in this circuit of venues, you're going to see everything from a 9 foot trim height, bottom of the lights on the house lighting rig, 9 foot, and then you're going to have days where it's 30 foot in the air with a big, powerful, multi-tiered, multi-trimmed lighting rig. I tend to put a limit on my floor package at 10 foot. As you see in a lot of these designs, 6 foot, 8 foot truss towers, 12-inch box, 8 foot GT with moving spot fixture or profile fixture on top. Now, 8 foot truss with a Mat Quantum on top will get you about 10 foot, 8 inches. So I just said 10 feet is generally my limit. I do 10 feet and then I plan accordingly with cable and mounting devices and cases and whatnot to be able to remove the top fixture, get the truss in place or pipe, and still work within that 9 foot, 10 foot clearance. I like to have I kind of have a saying that may be taken slightly wrong, but I take the biggest venue and the smallest venue on my tour as far as stage and rig size, and I forget about them. I come up with a design and a plan for everything else, look at it, and then I go back and look at the biggest and smallest venue saying, okay, is this going to spread out and be big enough and still look nice in this large venue? And more importantly, what are we going to do in the smaller venue? What happens when we only have 12 feet of depth? What happens when my side light is directly where the band on and off walk is? What happens when I can't fit my truss towers under the house lighting rig and it pushes everything on stage 3 feet forward? I can't lose that 3 feet. So Forget the big one, forget the small one, design something for the rest, and then come up with functional ways to implement it in the larger and smaller venues. One important thing to remember is that most venues will not let you remove house fixtures. That's not to say it won't ever happen or that it won't ever be allowed, but a general rule of thumb is to assume that you will not be able to move or remove house fixtures in a venue. Perhaps, you know, the front light, you've got a Lico that needs to be moved over 2 feet, that's a different story, but venues are not very willing to bring down their automated lighting or move it around because it causes more work for them, understandably, and we're all on time constraints. Pre-rigging versus daily builds. Always a really interesting choice and generally is based on space and budget. So pre-rigging, for everyone who doesn't know, is basically that set cart on the left put together with the fixtures on the right, and then they stay there for the duration of the tour. Things do not come off each day. The cabling is basically there. It's done to create efficiency and save you time. Always the best option to pre-rig, in my opinion. Labeling, flagging both ends on the loom. Also very important. If you're pre-rigging something, you should be able to color code it and label it so that you can just hand it to someone without any instruction and they just connect color to color, number to number. This frees you up to start doing other things and takes a lot of the guesswork out of staff changing day to day. Always a good idea on pre-rigging to spike your hang points, even if the fixtures are not coming off each day. This will help with maintenance as well as swapping out for problematic fixtures. Another good pre-rigging trick is to, whenever possible, address the fixtures to the same address number on separate universes. It might sound simple and basic, and a lot of people already know this, but if I have 4 of these set carts and a Mac Quantum on the top of each, and I'm running a universe out to each cart, it's going to be in my best interest to address the same fixture on each cart the same, as well as your spares, for faster changing and more compatibility with each other. Compatibility meaning swapping fixtures, moving them around, pull one off, put it on another, all things just to save time. Pre-rig, another fun idea for pre-rig is to get creative on what you're putting on your pre-rigging carts. Somewhat similar to this example here, I've recently used a custom cart for Taking Back Sunday that we actually strapped the guitar amps into the bottom of the cart. Moved everything into the venue quicker, cut down on cases, backline techs loved it. Just a nice little feature to make the stage cleaner and make the day go by quicker. Difference between pre-rig and a daily build. Daily builds can maximize your trailer space. Everything is in cases, everything's stacked, everything's, you know, maximizing the space. If you look at these carts on this image, they're great, they're fast, they're effective, but they take up a lot of floor space in a trailer and are not able to be stacked on or under. Daily build, in some cases, can double your trailer efficiency. It can also double or triple the amount of time it takes to set up a floor package. Daily build can also make your design more modular and adjustable. It just requires more time each day and generally more cable to be brought along. Still always a really good idea to create looms, label to and from for a daily build. This can help with local hands setting up for you, as I said before. Looms are very, very important whenever possible. Use them. They're your friend. They will make local hands love you. Another way to look at it is if you have a daily build with cable galore coming out of cases unlabeled, you're going to get a lot of questions. You're going to have a lot of questions from people who don't understand what you're trying to achieve. Generally speaking, we're going to talk a little bit later about writing a good, effective advance. One of those things is going to be that a lot of the local hands, even the local LDs, are not going to see your advance until you walk in the door. They won't see a plot unless you hand it to them a lot of times. It's just how the line of communication goes. The production manager of the venue will, and they'll look out for some red flags of size and load in and logistics, but the person actually there helping you set up your lighting rig hasn't seen anything until you walk in the door. If you are having issues with people setting up your package every day, if you're getting the same questions and things not working and data issues, power issues, things being cabled wrong, things being hung in the wrong spot, it's really a good idea to rethink your process and how you're giving this work to each person every day. Our goal as lighting designers in this position and this scenario is to make our lives as self-contained as possible. I walk into a venue and I do my best to require nothing of the venue staff. If anything, I hand them a case of cable with colors and numbers and I say, connect them to their mates, their colors and numbers, and I can walk away and start setting up front of house and everything gets set up. If you're having power issues, data issues, hang issues, it's probably not the local hand's fault. You're probably putting them into a position to not perform properly. So rethink your routine, rethink your color coding, your labeling, your looms, things like that, and really try to just make it as easy of a day as possible for everyone. Custom fixtures can be a troublesome speed bump, especially as I was just saying, the people on the front lines are not going to see your advance, and perhaps the person who is reading your advance doesn't really know what a custom fixture is. They don't need to. They're a production manager. They don't understand, you know, this finer point of lighting, which is totally fine and expected. But right along with my walk and chalk, I immediately look for custom fixtures. Just because they were not on the advance from the venue doesn't mean that they haven't shown up overnight because something broke. Probably one of the biggest things that can really hinder your day and put a emergency brake on your afternoon is when the house moving spots are custom made and now you have to build a profile for them. Hopefully, if they show up, you're going to get a DMX layout. Here's an example of one below that is a little spotty. This is kind of just given from sorry about that, folks. This is kind of just given from a venue and an example of some of the information you'll get, but also perhaps not all the information. I tend to suggest to have your FTP site or your resource site ready, whether that be, you know, a bookmark, a thumb drive, however it is available for you. I know it's a pretty different variety of ways depending on your console choice. So just have some sort of resource ready If you're going into these venues, then someone else has probably been in there, one of your colleagues, and might be able to help you out. I've definitely been lucky enough to have fellow LDs send me custom profiles and make my day a little easier. They see you're going in somewhere and say, hey, heads up, tomorrow you got this. So know how to use your fixture builder. Even in the most dire of times, you won't have any information, such as on this screen. You'll have a vague idea of what the fixture will do. So be ready with your fixture builder, know it, practice it beforehand. It can be a really daunting thing for a lot of console operators, and it will just make you a better LD overall. It'll help you understand the MX language. It'll help you understand your console language, and just make your life a lot easier. Again, these are all things that we're trying to lower the stress, make the day quicker, make your time more effective, and get you programming your show and through all the speed bumps. I suggest getting comfortable with your fixture builder before the tour starts. Very important. Be prepared to figure it out on your own. Just as I just said, not every venue staff has the same LD every day. Sometimes the house LD is new to the venue or the rig, and sometimes they just don't have custom fixture info for you. They've been running the same console for years or days or hours, and it's just there. You can't necessarily fault them for it. You can, but that is a futile effort. As I said, you want to stay self-sufficient. You want to stay self-contained. You want to minimize how many things you're relying on someone else for. And if you are the master of your own domain and can build any fixture on the planet, as long as you have some information, then it doesn't really matter if the house has information for you or not beyond the basics that you need to get going. Perhaps they have a fixture profile for you. Same house console as your touring console. Maybe they could just transfer it to you. Let's see here. Local ordinances. Kind of getting down towards the end here, if everybody just bears with me a little bit. Haze restrictions. You are definitely going to run into some haze restrictions. Anything from scheduled haze time, meaning someone has to turn off the fire alarm or the fire marshal has to come in and supervise. You'll also run into houses that require you to use their own haze. You will not be allowed to use a touring hazer, even if you have the same one. A lot of times I have found, even if I have the same haze or hazers on tour with me that the house has, they will require to use theirs. This is strictly for the safety of the show and the fluidity of the show. The last thing anyone wants is for the set to be stopped and for you to have to explain yourself to the fire marshal. If a house has haze restrictions, all you can do is adhere to them. It's the best idea anyway. As soon as you start arguing for your hazer or your haze, limits or lack of limits on your haze, then you are going to be responsible and on the hook for whatever may happen with the fire department. It can be very expensive. If the house is responsible, you are free and clear to just run your show. It can be a little bit of a downer to not have the haze you want, but generally speaking, you'll get the haze you need. Examples of this from a House of Blues standpoint, House of Blues Boston will require you to use their hazer at a curfewed time before the set or before the doors. House of Blues Anaheim will also require you to use their hazer, although it will run all day at the level that they set. Always a good idea to find out if there is a cost or a possibility or what that cost may be to extend the haze time. A lot of places that are bringing a fire marshal in will bring them in an hour or 2 hours before doors. If you need more than that, which a lot of us do, maybe we don't need, we just want. Always a good idea to ask. I've had experiences where a venue will tell you it's an additional $250 an hour to bring a fire marshal in for extra time. And I've had venues tell me that it is an extra $20 to bring a fire marshal in for an extra 3 hours. So always worth asking. If you can get 3 hours of work time for $20, I think your tour will probably give that to you. If they won't, perhaps you decide to pay for it out of your per diems. Always a good idea to carry a backdrop sample. As I said before, generally falls on the production manager or tour manager to hold, present, and be in charge of backdrop sample. I like to have documentation with me as well. Hopefully you've got a certificate on the back of the backdrop if you've got it. Always have it. Union breaks and house staff schedule. I just kind of threw this in. I like to talk to the house staff and the local staff and see what their schedule is beforehand. You know, you don't want to be working someone past their break unknowing to you. Always nice to, you know, be aware of what your local crew needs, treat them good, and they'll treat you good. Getting down to the last couple things here. Couple of trailer tricks that I found. Box truss versus GT HUD pre-rig kind of truss. In my opinion, box truss works good in a trailer. Pre-rig, GT, HUD, custom set carts like I showed you earlier can start being problematic in a bus trailer. I'm going off the assumption that we're working with an artist that carries a lot of merch in the nose of the trailer, has a fair amount of backline, let's say 4 to 5 band members, sometimes 2 guitar players, sometimes a keyboard setup. And then, so we've got merch, we've got backline, and then we've got a lighting package. Soon as you start putting pre-rig items on the floor space, you start lacking the ability to stack things. Pre-rig truss can be stacked, and you know you can fit 8-10 foot pre-rigged truss stacked on each other, wheels to top, too high into a trailer. You won't be able to do that if you're sharing a trailer with merch and a full complement of backline and the wheel wells as you see here. You're going to start running into space issues. Pre-rig truss a lot of times will not fit over the wheel wells, so you're really just working into the center of the trailer. Pre-rig carts are going to take up floor space and not be able to be stacked on. So these are all things you have to consider when you're making your design decisions. Are you in a truck or are you in a bus and trailer? Do you have a box truck? Do you have a semi? Do you only have partial space in a semi? And you don't really want to be stacking pre-rig truss every day by hand. You're not going to rely on venues having a forklift or dock height or things like that to help you. If you go pre-rig in a trailer, you're gonna end up hand stacking it. Backdrop at the tail. Always a good idea to keep any backdrops for yourself support at the tail of the trailer. That way you can get them out right away and get them hung while the trailer is being dumped. You can have the house LD or someone inside with you hanging the backdrops, getting them out of the way. Generally speaking, they'll be the last thing down at night as well, and they can just go right on the trailer last. Don't leave your backdrops at venues. We've all done it, or we all will do it. We hope to never do it again. Remember to check for your backdrops. Feeder, snake, and socket packs in different cases. This isn't necessarily blanket fact. I'd like to do those 3 cable packs in different cases. A couple of different reasons for this. That's a lot of copper to have in one case. Feeder and socket packs together is just a heavy brutal case that people are not going to like. Obviously, your snake should be in its own case, gets run easier. You know, it's manageable. You don't have to bring the whole thing out if you don't need to. But putting all three in different cases gives you more options. If you walk into a venue for your quick walk and chalk before your load-in and realize that they have the feeder you need, you leave your feeder on the trailer. Same thing with your snake. You walk in and the house has multiple Cat 5 lines for you to run and you don't need to bring your snake, you don't bring it in. We're making our day easier, less stress, more effective. Last slide here before a little summary. Here's an example of Taking Back Sunday's trailer pack from a few years ago. We did 12-inch box truss. They were 12-inch box truss, 6 foot high with 2-foot metal bases that stayed on. You see at the roughly 7-foot mark, everything forward under the truss was allocated for backline and merch. They got a little bit more than half of the trailer because I was able to sneak 5 of my truss towers on a load bar attic. What we've done here is taken a pair of load bars, one at the 7.5 foot roughly line and one at the 9-foot line, and created an attic in the trailer for 5 of my 6 truss towers to live on. You can see the bases perfectly overlap, everything's nice and snug, and they were still able to double stack underneath those truss towers. Kind of a tight trailer pack, but again, this was a daily build, had to be modular, and we didn't really have the space to pre-rig. So after thinking about all this, what do you need to do to create an effective advance? One of the things I try to focus on, if you look to the right, there's kind of just an example of an older advance of mine. I try to not give too much information. Going back to what we were saying, a lot of the frontline hands for you are not going to see any of this beforehand. You can't assume that your house LD or every one of your stage techs is going to be emailed or handed what you see here on the right. So you want to preface it, at least in the verbiage of your advance, on what you need and what can cause red flags for a production manager or venue manager skimming through here. Power requirements. Do you need 3-phase? Do you need single phase? How many amps? Dimensions for your larger items. As I said before, you want to try to design anything custom or large into something that can fit through a standard door. Even if you are fitting through a standard door, it's worth giving those dimensions and giving them to the venue to confirm. Then if you show up and those aren't the accurate dimensions, you're covered, you've done your due diligence, and from there out, nobody can really get mad at you for that. You've given them everything you can, and you've covered your own butt. Front light and focus needs, as we said before, how many front lights do you need? What do you need them to do? Let the venue know that you're going to do a front light focus. Don't take for granted that just because you're coming in with a lighting package, the venue expects that you're going to do a front light focus. Let them know. What kind of atmospheric effects are you carrying? Are you carrying lasers? Do you have a local laser safety officer for New York or Arizona or Oregon? Have you covered that? Are you carrying a hazer? Multiple hazers? What type? Don't just give them the brand name and model. Let them know if it's water or oil-based. This will change venue to venue. More and more venues today are not allowing any oil-based haze. Are you bringing soft goods? Your backdrop, any kind of soft good, they're going to want fire certificates and burn samples and documentation. These are all liability things. Gel preferences. Always a good idea to throw in what you would like the conventional lighting gelled to if it is there. Again, the house LD may not see this in advance, but sometimes they will, and it will save you some time in your day. I also like to give the number of universes I have available. Generally speaking, on my preferred console and setup, I will have 4 hard lines available for a house. This is generally enough. Nothing is guaranteed. Obviously, venue to venue, it's going to be different, but I have found that most venues of this size have the main stage lighting rig on no more than 3 universes. You will run into a few that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th universe is some extra things, but it still seems as though venues are pretty much set up for a touring lighting designer to come in with a single universe floor package and be able to take 3 universes from the house, maxing you out at a small footprint of 4. I like to be able to tell, the house how many universes I have available. It's not an extremely important piece of information, but it has helped me in the past. I have definitely had houses reach out to me in advance and say, hey, the house rig is in 6 universes. Would you like us to get it down to 3? So that obviously saved a lot of time. That's pretty much all I've got, everybody. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed it, and makes your lives a little bit easier. Everything will be coming up Millhouse.
Okay, we do have some questions. What are the power requirements, and how do you distribute cabling for the rig?
What are the power requirements and how to distribute cable to the rig?
The rig.
Well, it's going to depend on what kind of, it's going to depend on a few things. It's going to depend on what your rig has. You want to do your power calculations and distribution accordingly to what your design is. And it's going to come down to your distro limitations. Distro and let's say a node for Cat5 to DMX conversion, how many outs do you have? Do you have a distro with 32 circuits that you can splay out individual runs to a floor package? Same with the data. If I've got 6 truss towers and 6 outputs from my opto or my DMX split, I like to run an individual line to each. Same thing with power. Pre-rigging, you wanna try, if you're pre-rigging or not, you want to try your best to terminate at truss towers or pipe and base points. Pass-throughs and adding cable from one tower to another can be problematic, cause more work, and just messy up the stage.
Okay, this next question is a multi-parter. When you come into a big-ish venue and there are a lot of par cans, do you refocus to fit your show? If the house LD doesn't want you to refocus, what are your go-tos? And do you replace the band to fit the house light?
That's a tough question. I will always prefer to do a par can focus. You're right in the fact that sometimes you can't do a full focus. Either the house LD is not able to, perhaps it's a house rule. If I come to a house that is predominantly par cans with a minimal to no amount of automated lighting that I'm not able to refocus the par cans, then yes, I would reposition my artists to the best of my ability, staying within what they need. A lot of artists aren't going to let you move them around on stage drastically. As I said before, they're going to want that drum riser 12 foot from the downstage edge, just because that's what they're comfortable with. But yes, I would do what I could to move the band to complement the house lighting rig. There's 2 different trains of thought, and I've had this conversation with a few people recently, and neither is wrong. A lot of times people will kind of design the floor package, and then whatever's in the house is whatever's in the house. They try to isolate all of their needs to the floor package so that they're not relying on anything from the house lighting rig, which is a smart way to go. I personally try to rely on the house rig for things to kind of make the show more versatile and give you a more variety of style coming from above and below. But that being said, you can't plan on certain things. I can't plan on the house having 24 moving spot fixtures every night. So you really have to compartmentalize your wants and your needs. Maybe just backlight specials. So yeah, it's a ebb and flow of what do you do in that situation. And personally, I would try to acclimate the stage setup to the house lighting rig.
Okay, the next question is asking, what type of remote focusing systems do you recommend or have used?
I've used a variety of them. It seems like everybody's kind of got their own, at least consoles. Thinking through my head, I think everybody now kind of has something that is offered directly through the console brand, and that's always the best bet, in my opinion, to stay within brand and just use what's native on the console. Personally, I use a DMX tester that I just send signal through a Bluetooth connection to run channels. I don't require a whole lot out of my Focus remote other than just bringing up conventional channels. So I just have an inline DMX tester that's being hit with Bluetooth from my phone.
Okay, the next question comes in from a venue tech. He's asking, what are your preferred colors in the house rig, and what are common colors you see house par rigs?
That's a good question too. My preferred colors will change artist to artist. If my artist doesn't have any opinion on it, I will generally ask for red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and amber. And in that priority order as well, I'll have that in my advance. I prefer equally balanced RGB, cyan, magenta, amber. What I see a lot of times going into venues is generally a red, green, blue complement on the pars, and then the secondary colors being a yellow, a lavender, maybe a Congo. Always a lot of open white as well, which I don't necessarily use for my par rigs. ACLs and moles, of course, come into play in their own factors, but from the actual 64K par rig, I see a lot of RGB, yellow, lavender, UV.
All right, the next question is asking, how can we avoid having dense clouds of haze hanging in the middle?
Meaning hanging on the stage or getting even haze, assuming it means how do we get haze evenly distributed through the venue. Airflow. I tend to use the snail fans, the directional, just, home improvement fans. Anytime you can, 2 hazers, left and right, independently addressed so that you have control over them. I also suggest, if possible, running your haze for the duration of the show. Even if support is being run off of just house lighting, I like to offer up my haze if it's financially viable and everyone's fine with it. I like to be able to offer up my haze for the support band so that I can see what the house is doing. I can build a base of atmosphere during the support bands, whether you put it on a timed cue list or just give the operating LT control of haze on your console. But airflow is a problem for sure, especially when considering drummers. A lot of drummers like to have fans on them, and they like them in a very specific location, a lot like where the riser's got to be or where the guitar amp has to be. Artists will want their comforts of the stage in very specific spots. So if you've got a drummer that always wants a fan at full blast on the upstage right corner of his riser, you're going to be pulling all that haze right through that fan, and maybe he likes it, or he or she likes it or doesn't like it, or maybe it's just causing a haze issue, clumping on stage and building up in the wrong spot. I like to have a lot of fans. Have a lot of fans at your ready. I also find that when you're playing with hazers that have a fan setting on the control as well as an output, don't always run the output fan at 100%. If you've got a fan next to your hazer and you also have fan control in the hazer, play with your settings. Maybe your hazer puts out drastically different type of atmosphere when you're running the output at 60% and the fan at 10%. Then look at it the other way. Run your output at 10% and your fan at 60%, and then bring your intensity up to 60%. I think a lot of people take for granted that the fan on a hazer, they think it's actually directional and giving you, push across the stage, when I kind of feel like it's differently. It's more about breakup of the haze. You're pushing more air through it at that point of output, so you're breaking it up in a different texture. So play with your outputs, play with your fan on the haze, and then carry some directional fans to get it where you need to go.
All right, the next question is asking if you can explain what is the universe in the console that you are referring to?
So a universe in lighting refers to number of channels. Lighting fixtures require a number of DMX channels for their operating. If we bounce back to this, you can see this fixture has 20 channels of DMX. A universe of DMX will allow you 512 channels. And once you have put enough lights or fixtures or anything that is being controlled via the DMX, when you put enough of them in line and take up the 512 channels, you need to move on to another universe. Universes can be split and routed and allocated in different ways. You may have heard me mention 5-pin DMX. 5-pin copper DMX cable can carry one universe of DMX control. If you need a second one, you need to add a second cable. More and more these days, people are going to a Cat5 network cable. Greatly expands the number of DMX universes you can run down one line. It will require you to hit some sort of conversion device on stage to convert that Cat5 data signal back out to 5-pin DMX. In most cases, there are more and more fixtures these days that are able to be connected through Cat5 cable and Cat6 network cable and just run multiple universes in that same line the whole way. But generally speaking, a lot of the stuff that I was talking about in this presentation were Cat5 cable from your console, run 300 feet to the side of the stage, and it will hit a device to convert that network signal to a standard DMX signal and output from a rack item 5-pin DMX into individual configured universes.
All right, the next question is asking if you always recommend 8-foot truss towers instead of 10-foot.
I mean, it's not a blanket recommendation. Of course, a lot of what I talked about is venue specific. If I look at a tour routing and see, because I've been fortunate enough to go through a lot of these venues and just kind of know some of the space restrictions, I can stretch to a 10-foot sometimes. Or if, let's say, let's say you're working with a DJ and, you know, it's a very small footprint on stage and you can kind of put your towers wherever you'd like, then you could stretch to 10 foot. I stick with 8 foot because there are, I'd say 4 to 6 venues across the country, A-market venues, that I find myself in a lot. And if I go any higher than an 8-foot truss tower, I have to push downstage of the upstage lighting hang. And then I'm killing some stage space, and I'm also blocking some of the house rig, and the overall aesthetic is kind of ruined. But I stick to 8 foot and have a plan B for 1 or 2 venues that I can't squeeze them in under a truss. But, you know, I would prefer 10 foot. I would certainly prefer to go 10 foot. It creates a bigger, bolder look on stage, gets over backline, things like that. But I generally stick with 8 foot. If you're trying to, if your design requires you to never take anything off the top of your ground support, off of your truss tower or off of your pipe and base, I would go with 6 foot in a lot of these venues. You know, you're going to have days where you can't put your drummer on a riser because their head will be hitting parkins. So if you absolutely have to have your floor package in the same positions every day and they have to be hung on top of the same floor support device, then I would say cap it at 6 foot. 8 foot, you will run into some hiccups.
All right, next question. Will the venue know which hazer to use, or is that something that you need to research?
Venues in this size circuit that we're talking about, your hazers will basically be independent of each other. I'd say a great majority of the time, venues will have their own atmosphere device, whether it be a fogger, a hazer, whether you can control it or not, whether it is controllable or just always on. These are things that are going to change day to day. I suggest carrying your own haze if you're able to, if your budget and your space and everything can afford it. I would also highly recommend carrying a water-based hazer over an oil-based hazer, because more and more venues are putting a ban on oil-based hazers just for maintenance and gear life longevity. So, you know, you're a little bit independent of each other. The house hazer is what it is, and hopefully your hazer is something that is friendly to most houses. That being said, important to advance it, let them know what you're bringing. And they'll, as long as you're reading their advances sent to you, they will let you know in their advance, hey, this is what we have. We don't, you know, we do or don't have a haze restriction. You know, I've done tours where the budget can only afford a lower end quality hazer, and you walk in somewhere and they blow you out of the water, and you just say, hey, can I use your hazer tonight? Sure. And as I said before, I've also gone into places where they have an oil-based hazer and I'm carrying water, multiple water-based, and I don't want to use their oil-based hazer. I don't want to clean my lights the next day. So I'm going to offer up for my hazer just to run for the whole bill of show. So definitely important to communicate atmosphere and your atmosphere needs for the show, but you're not going to really be able to dictate what a venue has or will have for your show. It's kind of just what they have. Same with lighting fixtures. A lot of times in this scenario, you're not specifying a rig for your show. You're just kind of dealing with what they have. So.
All right, the next question is asking, do you ever come across odd number fixture counts, and how do you work with that and programming?
I definitely come across odd number fixture counts. Personally, and this is just a personal preference, I do not like odd number fixture counts. Unless you have a specific need, you know, for that downstage center singer that loves that that center light, it looks great. But personally, I prefer even number fixtures. If I find myself in a venue with odd number fixtures, I will just eliminate the center fixture. I'll patch it and park it so it looks least obtrusive in the rig, and then just forget about it. Kind of just toss that one away. Going back to what I was saying on this, that's what my show is programmed to. So I don't have odd number fixtures there. I have odd number of strobes, but my strobes don't necessarily matter whether it's an even or odd number in my programming style. If I have odd number fixture rig, everything I've done in pre-programming is off. A lot of my programming theory and pre-production is based on even numbers, symmetry, fixture placement, things like that. So I generally toss that odd number out. Not to say that odd number fixture designs aren't beautiful. I think they can look amazing, but again, we're talking about what makes your life easier and what's the common denominator between all these fixtures or all these venues. And generally speaking, right now I can't even think of 2 venues that have odd number on the upstage or midstage truss. So most venues are going to be even fixture numbers.
All right, next question. All of your shows have giant looks. You have a great talent in making every room feel like an arena rig. When dealing with tight budgets, what design strategies do you use to stretch budgets or stretch rigs to look or feel so big and beautiful?
Thank you, whoever said that. That's very kind words. I try to, it's kind of a tough question. I really just take my budget and try to maximize. We all have our wish list of fixtures, and we want 32 of fixture X and we want 24 of fixture Y, and then as a lot of us know, you give your first design pitch and your budget that you've written up from your vendor, and immediately the client says, no, we got to cut 30% from that. So I try to stay relevant in technology as far as something professional, effective, functional, versatile, but without sacrificing numbers. You want to think about your band size compared to your fixture numbers. If you've got 4 or 6 people in the band, it's going to be hard to make it look really big and display everyone with just 4 truss towers with 4 moving profile fixtures on top. I generally like to have each one of my profile or wash fixtures on a floor package be usable for each band member. If I've got a 4-piece band, upstage center drums, downstage left, downstage right, and downstage center, a 6 or 8 truss tower system with at least 1 moving spot or profile on top allocates at least 1 for every band member. A lot of people, in my opinion, are not focusing on lighting the band these days, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that's what your artist wants, and you give them what you want. That's first and foremost for us. But I try to place a lot of emphasis on lighting the band members. That's what we're there to do. That's not to say front light. That's strictly on them. I'm talking about lights displaying band members. If you've got, like I said, 4 members in the band or 6 members in the band, say you have 6 members in a band, you need at least 6 spots, or you need at least 6 lights. You need to be able to light them all at once. You don't want your lighting rig to look small compared to the band. In efforts to make looks crispy and cleaner and more presentable, I know a few people here watching this have heard me go off on this tangent, but one of the most important things in programming and lighting design, in my opinion, that is greatly underutilized and forgotten by a lot of people is indexing your gobos. You know, take the time on your gobo palettes to index every one of your lights and the house lights, and just make it part of your day when you're updating palettes. Lining up your gobos and making fixture 101 look like 106 in the house rig, if you get those exactly the same from your point of view and everything else, it will add so much more to the overall look. Index your gobos. It's not something that the average person is going to notice and say, oh, look, that lighting person indexed their gobos. But it will make the difference of someone looking up and being like, that looks good, or that looks really good. So matching colors, house rig to touring rig colors, like I said before, intensities, very important. You don't want your rig or the house rig outshining each other. You're trying to make a cohesive, singular design that looks like you brought it all in. So index your gobos, update your intensities, and check your colors. Yeah.
Okay, do you carry your own ballast for truss towers or expect the house to provide sandbags?
Depends on the tour. I generally, I shouldn't say generally, I, at any cost, do not rely on the house to supply any ballast or sandbags or ground rigging support. Going back to what I've said a few times through this, my goal is to stay as self-contained and self-sufficient as possible. I don't want to rely on the venue having sandbags, because what happens when they don't? I have found 12-inch box truss. Generally, you're going to be carrying some sand, which makes the daily build harder. You've got more work and you've got more weight. You can get away with a little bit more on the pre-rig stuff if you get a big enough base for a GT or a pre-rig truss. You're dealing with a 200-pound base, so it's 3 foot by 3 foot. So depending on what you're putting on there, you might be able to not need anything on the base. But if I need sand, I'm carrying sand. Just like if I need a snake, I'm carrying a snake. Yeah, keep it with you. Anything you need, you should bring.
Okay, we have one more question. If you were
Sure.
starting your career from scratch again, what advice would you give yourself in terms of getting into the business?
Tough question too. I would learn every console from the get-go. I can operate and program pretty much any type of console. As I said, I'm generally a Hog 4 programmer. I can program and operate all the big boys, everyone out there, but just with different speed. And I think, kind of like a lot of things in life, the earlier you learn them, the more susceptible you are to learning quick, in an expedited manner. I would suggest learning as many consoles as you can. And by learning, I mean playing around with them, running shows, read the manual. I may sound a little crazy, but I really enjoy reading console manuals. When I'm bored, I will just sit down and open to a random page and a console manual and just start reading it. I think learning a variety of consoles prepares you for the opportunities that will present themselves. You know, it's hard to be an expert at every console, to be an expert programmer on every console. Nobody really has the time or brain capacity for that, but knowing them can be very, very beneficial. As I said, with building custom profiles for fixtures, just a better understanding of the DMX language. The more you learn about DMX and the more you learn about other consoles and fixtures and how the language actually works will expand your ideas and your capabilities on any console. So I would say learn a lot, give yourself options, and you know, strap in for kind of a crazy career, because you know there's a lot of people out there grinding that that are great at what they do and haven't been given opportunities. It's a very opportunistic career, and all you can do is be ready and have a good attitude and kind of just keep plugging away. So don't get discouraged. Learn everything you can, and you know, just be ready for whatever opportunity presents itself.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. It was a pleasure having you present today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to do this with us.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Brad, and everybody at Martin. It was fun. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and hope everybody's staying home and staying healthy.
And just a reminder, this webinar was recorded, and we will have the link available in a few days. If you're interested in attending any of the future sessions, you can find those on pro.harman.com. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye.